Hi everybody, my name is John Stewart and I'm a certified addiction professional here in South Africa. I am also one of the many excellent recovery coaches on the EHAB.healthcare website, which is an online addiction support program and more. You can find me there, and there'll be some details a little later on about how to do that. Today, I want to talk to you about what the title says there, an essential and recovery, what I believe to be an essential and recovery critical narrative out of the 12-step fellowships. And if you've spent any time in NA or AA, then you will have heard the terminology people, places, and things. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do this in an NAAA type share because I think that's going to put it in a context that most of you will be able to relate with. And I want to test my new clicky thing. It works. Okay, people, places, and things. So, just to put my story or my recovery in a bit of context, is I was clean maybe 5 or so years before I ever set foot in NA or AA. So that's the first time I heard this terminology. Where I got clean was a place called the Ark, which was a very big homeless shelter in Cape Town. And they house anywhere upwards of 1,500 people long term. That's where I got clean. When I left the Ark was when I first started to come into contact with 12-step fellowships. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break it down personally into these three things. Now, people, they say, all the old people, all your old using friends, everybody that's a negative influence on you, you need to consider breaking contact with, moving away from, getting away from. And for me, that was everybody. Now, I'm what is known, or what some people would call, or I was, what some people would call a culturally enmeshed addict. And basically what that means is that you couldn't separate me in any way, on any level, from my addiction and the addiction culture. For the longest time, I made a career out of the addiction culture. I made a living out of it. I was using all the time, thinking about using all the time, finding ways and means to keep using all the time. And for the longest time, that kind of worked for me. I was able to function to a degree in society, pay my bills, pay my rent, and all that kind of thing. Until eventually it was crack cocaine and heroin that brought me to my knees, put me on the streets, and ultimately led me into the Ark and ultimately into the 12-step fellowships. So now when I heard the terminology for people, places, and things, I mean, the people was a no-brainer for me. I mean, I had no straight friends, no body that was safe or that was a positive influence in my life. I mean, I was a negative influence on most of the people in my life. So for me, that was everybody. I had to dump everybody, and I knew that. It was a no-brainer for me. And I marveled at how much people struggled with this concept of letting go of some people. And look, it might only be for a season. You might have to let go of some people for now. Maybe you can reconnect with them at some point. I mean, I dumped my entire friend base or associate base, everybody. Today, I'm friends with a lot of them and very close friends with a few of them. again. But today it's no longer a threat to me. Their lifestyle, their behavior, many of them are clean anyway. They naturally grew out of the drug culture and drugs and partying and all of that. There's one or two that still use, but their lives seem to work. They didn't cross the lines I did. But initially, dumped them all. Today, I'm okay with them. No judgment from me. They know who I am. They respect my recovery. I know who they are. It's not a problem for me. So maybe it's just for a season. Maybe you need to think about just staying away from some people until you reach some sort of middle to mature recovery. You're going to have to work that out. Places. Again, that was a no-brainer for me. All the clubs, the pubs, the jolls, the concerts, the biker rallies. That was a big one for me because I was a biker and I loved to go to the rallies. But the rallies for me was just somewhere where I would absolutely debauch on drugs and alcohol. So for me, it was more than just bike rallies. It was bikes. I gave up motorbikes. Because in trying to keep any connection to the biking culture for me at that time was just not going to work. It was a hard thing to come to terms with because I was in the ARC, and this was round about the time that Nelson Mandela was getting voted into the presidency. Apartheid was officially over, the world sanctions were getting dropped, and all the big international bands that previously boycotted South Africa were now starting to come to South Africa. And this is one of the things that I really missed being a South African, was being able to go to concerts. And I would go to concerts whenever that opportunity was there for me. And one of the bands that were coming to play in Cape Town, I'm not 100% sure the band, it might have been U2 or Skunk and Nancy. Anyway, not important. What's important is how it affected me. As I was sitting in the ARC, I was maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months away from the last time I used. Excuse me. And I knew the band was coming, and I really, 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 really wanted to go and see them. And I sat and wrestled with it for a day or two. You know, going into that ambivalent place. You know, should I, shouldn't I, must I, mustn't I? Can I sneak out, can't I sneak out? And eventually I came to a decision that it's just not going to be a good idea. If I sneak out of the ARC and I go to this concert, I'm going to know lots of people there. The drugs and alcohol are going to be there. I knew it's not going to be wise. And I made a very reluctant decision not to go to the concert. And it pissed me off. I was really angry about that. But I was in a unique space. And again, once I was in the 12-step fellowships and I heard this terminology, people and places, both of them were a no-brainer for me. And again, I marveled at how people struggled with this concept. I mean, stay away from people that are going to bring you down. Try not to go to all the old places. But now you can personalize places even further. You know, some people use it home alone. Then they might never leave their home, or they might never even leave their bedroom. So if you coming into treatment and you're spending a time away from home, and then you're going to be going back home again to that same house, to that same bedroom, that's going to be risky for you. And something that I would encourage clients or share with them some options or ideas maybe to do something about that is when you get if you've got somebody at home, get them to put new furniture in there, maybe move you to a different room, maybe paint the room a different color, and do something, anything to break that spiritual, that really powerful negative spiritual dynamic that this addiction has over you. Okay, especially in that space. Okay, and think about how powerful that space is. I mean, look at the amount of ritual that goes into using. Look how much time and care and all of that goes into preparation and all of that around using. Now you can see how powerful that is, yeah? Try and break that somehow. Move to a different house, different flat if you can. If you can't, try and do something to break the aesthetic of the place. Whatever it is, the people, the places, you need to personalize what that means to you in your life, in your context. Okay? And try not to just keep it at an intellectual, philosophical understanding of what this narrative means. You've got to deeply personalize it. And I'm going to give you some homework at the end for you to help you to try and personalize what this means. Okay, now people and places, kind of obvious. Less obvious, and where I feel people really misunderstand and really miss the mark, is with things. What are the things? And I'm going to share 5 things from my journey. One of the first things for me was music. And most people, many people trying to get into recovery vastly underestimate how powerful music, how powerful an influence music is. Again, I was in the Ark. The Ark was very primitive in its facilities and what it could give you. Everything there was donated. The food was abysmal. The living conditions were abysmal. It was a tough place, but it was better than the street where I came from. So I was willing to put up with those conditions rather than go backwards, rather than go back onto the streets or back into the crack house or back into the gang culture. Okay? This is something that I never lost sight of in my journey. The pain I was in and the pain of the future was never greater than the pain behind me, never. From the first day I walked into the Ark until this day today, which is around about 22 years, I've never lost sight of that. And I think that's what kept me clean in these early years before I got into NA and AA, and I started doing step work and going to group therapy and having a sponsor and all of that. Just the fear of what was behind me, the pain of what was behind me, kept me in check, kept me focused forward, no matter how slow that seemed at times. So coming back to music, sitting in the Ark and suffering in there, no money, so there's nothing to smoke, no cool drinks, nothing, no chocolates, and was craving chocolates. As some of you know, it's when you in early recovery, you crave sweet things. So no money. So it was tough. I was there feeling sorry for myself. And I thought, I'm going to organize some music, and music will make it a bit more bearable. a bit easier. And in those days I was very into the grunge scene, you know, Nirvana and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and all that kind of music. Prong, Tool. Not that that's important, but anyway, that's the kind of music I made a plan and organized. And I've got 6 or 7 cassettes and a little cassette player. CDs were still quite new in those days, so we still had tapes. And headphones, and I started to listen to this music. And within a day, 2 days max, I was suffering from such extreme FOMO, that's fear of missing out, and craving on steroids. And I understood, and I knew that this music's not good for me. I can't listen to this. And I gave it away. And for the next 3 or so years, I only listened to gospel music. Slowly but surely, as I got more mature and stronger in my recovery, started introducing and allowing music back into my life. And where now I can listen to most music without any worry or fear, or making me crave, or make me feel like I'm missing out on anything. And in fact, the music's even better. I'm very passionate about music, and I thought it was the other way around. I thought the drugs made the music better, and that's not true. Being in recovery and being sober has made the music much better. Okay, I hear it much better. I'm much more present, much more focused. It's just much better. So there's the one thing. Another thing for me was movies, specifically certain types of movies and scenes in movies. We used to go and hire videos. I think this is before DVDs even. We go and get VHS videos, and I'd always look for, like ultra-violence, gangsters, drugs, explicit sex, etc. Those kind of movies. And again, found myself watching these movies and watching in the scenes and feeling uncomfortable and feeling FOMO and often craving and lonely and horny. So I understood that the movies were having the same kind of impact on me as the music was, and it was just not good for me at that stage. And for a long time, I just watched PG movies or read books. So there's 2. A third thing for me was my uniform. For 30 odd years, I flitted between the heavy metal scene, the punk scene, the biker scene. So my standard dress was steel toe biker boots, Levi 501 jeans, studded belt, a t-shirt with some sort of band or something cool embossed on the front, cut off at the sleeves to show the tattoos, leather cut with my biker colors, etc., etc. Earrings, rings, jewelry. And that was a consistent look for me for over 20 years. And I had to dump that. I didn't see any point in trying to hold on to anything from the past. And I didn't see the point of impressing a whole bunch of homeless people about what a cool, dangerous ex-bad guy, because they just didn't care. So I didn't see a point. So I dumped the uniform. And to this day, I've never put it back on. And for the longest time, just lived in tracksuit pants and sneakers and t-shirts and hoodies. So there's the 3 kind of obvious things, okay? One that's not so obvious, and definitely a thing for me, was my attitude. Because I had this image, an ego. What when was part of the uniform, was part of the look, was part of the image, was how I walked. You know, with a slight limp and a rolling of the shoulders, you know, and the 1,000-yard stare, you know, walk into a room and scan it, you know, with that look. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. You've got your own version of this. And also how I talked. There was a certain way I talked, and I would use the F word, like a comma. I would be very sarcastic in my humor. My humor was very cutting and often sexually inappropriate. Sarcastic. So it wasn't immediately obvious, and for a good few years it didn't change. Because in the ark, nobody really cared, it didn't really impress anybody. Everybody was so busy with their own misery that it didn't really get noticed. It's only when I came into NA and AA, and I got a sponsor, and I started mixing with Joe Normal and Joe Public, that it became more and more apparent that my attitude was really sucky. And people were getting hurt by my humor and my sarcasm. And it was leading to conflict. I was having conflict with Joe Normal and Joe Public. And I was having conflict with the people in the group therapy that I was attending. And in NA and AA and in the church I was starting to attend. And I got challenged quite severely by my mentor. His name's Colin Garnett. And if you sign on to EHAB.healthcare at any point, you'll see a lot of Colin there. He's formulated an online addiction recovery program, which I have the privilege of being one of the coaches to. But anyway, we'll talk about that at the end of the talk. But Colin was my mentor at that time, and he severely challenged me, and it made me angry, and it hurt my feelings. But once I got over it and sat and thought about it, and had a look at my behavior and how I was impacting the people around me, I got it. I saw it. And as soon as I saw it, I didn't want any more part of it. I wanted to change. You know, up until this point, I was the definition of a dry drunk. You know, no mind and mood altering substances, but sucky attitude in every other way. I mean, all my behavior, a lot of my behavior as an addict was still present. And it took step work and group therapy and confrontation and conflict to start changing that. But that was a big thing for me, maybe one of the biggest things for me out of the people, places and things narrative. Now the last thing, and it's in the same vein as this, is my propensity to being dodgy. Now for my Dutch friends and Belgian friends, I've got two great words from another friend of mine. It's duister and achterbaks. That's Flemish Dutch words for dodgy. As jy achterbaks is, as jy duister is. Okay? So my propensity to being dodgy. I mean, I made myself above certain rules. I made myself special and different. I don't have to obey that. That doesn't really apply to me. Very manipulative still. Cunning still. not willing to sacrifice getting my way, and would often control and manipulate and gaslight people and situations so that it worked in my favor. And again, it's not something that was obvious to me straight away. It further into my recovery, the more I worked on myself, the more work I did, it became more and more obvious. And again, also through the new relationships I had in my church and in the 12-step fellowships and with Colin and other people, they kept mirroring this behavior back to me. And I got introduced to a concept, to a narrative called the 2 sugar rule. And it's a very simple rule. And it was the basis for the program of the rehabilitation center where I used to work, where Colin was the program director, I was the senior counselor there. At base camp, if you boil the whole program down to its last nut and bolt, is the 2 sugar rule. And basically the 2 sugar rule goes like this. You're only allowed 2 sugars in your coffee or tea or porridge or cereal at any one time. That's the rule. Now there's no cameras, it's not monitored, it's not counted, it's not weighed. The sugar's just there. In a very simplified version, Colin does a very powerful a share like this or talk like this on 2 sugar, what he calls 2 sugar integrity, and there'll be a link down below for you to follow and go and have a look at that teaching. It's very powerful, it's very formidable, and it's an absolute checkmate move. And it's gonna, if you can apply the 2 sugar rule to your life, if you can assimilate it into your life, it's going to change a lot of things. It's difficult to relapse if you're following the 2 sugar rule. So coming back to just a very basic flyover what the 2 sugar rule is and the sugar. Only 2 sugars at any time. So if I'm in my room, the door's closed, and I'm used to having 5 sugars, and I really, really want 5 sugars, and I can absolutely get away with 5 sugars, and I do. I take 5 sugars because I can get away with it. Your addiction's probably not over. You've not finished using it. Same scenario, in my room, door closed. I really, really want those 5 sugars. I can absolutely get away with 5 sugars, but I make a decision. The rule says 2, I'm only going to take 2. Nobody can see it, only me. That's the birth of my recovery. That decision to obey the 2 sugar rule is the birth of my recovery. That's where my recovery started. It's all about secret integrity, what you do in secret. Your addiction will live or die in secret where nobody can see. A game changer. So there you have it, people, places and things. Let's see if the clicky thing works. Nope. Got to sleep maybe. Homework that I promised. Just for yourself, for your own growth. Make 3 columns. People, places, things. Start making your own list of who, where, and what you need to start making changes with. How is this narrative relative in your life? And make the list and keep the list, because the more you work on yourself, the more step work you do, the further you get into recovery, the list is going to grow. and compare it to how you started making the list and where you've ended up with the list. How is your insight and self-awareness growing because of the work you're doing? Absolutely worth it. So there you go. People, places, and things. I hope that's made it a bit clearer. I've always felt that people, places, and things is a vastly underrated and vastly understood narrative. And I think that if you can absolutely get people, places, and things and apply it, it's already enough to stay clean. If you're thoroughly applying people, places, and things, doing step work, doing a daily step 10, which is your daily inventory, difficult to relapse in that space. Okay? So think about that. Take that away with you. Feel free to email me your lists if you want. I'd love to see how people are interpreting these talks. I'll give you feedback, guidance if necessary. So feel free to send it to me. Couple of other things. If you want to get into a more therapeutic relationship with me, I've got many years working as an addictions counselor, so very experienced. Also, as I said earlier, a recovery coach on EHAB.healthcare. You can come and find me there. It's very affordable. There will be a link below. There might even be a picture on the next slide. I can't remember. But send me an email. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I'm going to start doing fairly regular content, all recovery and relapse related and step work related, to try and help make people's understanding of a lot of the 12-step concepts more understandable. Okay, so I think that's it. Let's have a see what's on the last slide. There we go. There's my email, WhatsApp, and Telegram, I think that is, my Facebook page, and the web address to www.ehab.healthcare. Come and find me there. There's a really awesome, robust, ready-made recovery program there called The Value of Addiction, formulated by Colin Garnett. Not that expensive if you compare it to going into a treatment center. EHAB.healthcare can either be used as an aftercare program, or it can be used as a recovery program. Not everybody needs to go to treatment. So go and check it out. Find me there. Otherwise, click on the subscribe button, send me an email, send me a WhatsApp, and I'll see you on the next talk, which is going to be about step work. See you then.